All right, the City of Avondale Estates, Board of Mayor Commissioners. This is June 27, 2024. It's a public hearing and is now 6:01. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We have an agenda before us. Do I have a motion to adopt?
So moved.
That was Lisa. Do I have a second?
Second.
That was Graham. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. The only item at this hearing is to hear from the public. So we're here. Let me just read public hearing number 3 for the 2024 millage rate. The governing authority of the City of Avondale Estates, us, has tentatively adopted a 2024 millage rate of 9.55 mils. So we would like to hear from the public. You have a 3-minute limit on your initial statement or question or whatever. We'll do our best to address that if we can. And it's open for comment. Mr. Dorr.
Take the Zoom calls first.
Why?
Just be helpful to hear them. Well, we seem to have trouble with them.
Oh,
But
do we have any on Zoom? What's that? We don't have any on Zoom anyway.
My name's Paul Dora, 820 Stratford Road. I want to speak to the millage rate. I emailed all of you all earlier today. I know who, John, Mike, I don't know if you saw it, you're probably at work. Could you share Ryan's?
Yeah. I'm looking at it. Yes, sir.
Did you have a chance to look at it?
I glanced at it briefly. Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Mayor, did you have a chance to look at it?
Did not actually. I'm looking at it now, but go ahead.
If you just take a few seconds and look at the cover letter that summarizes.
Oh, wait, I did read that part, yeah. Go ahead. Yep.
All right. Last night's public hearing was very illuminating. I don't think many of us appreciate the complexity of how Patrick and everyone deals with the county in terms of taxes. So I woke up this morning and realized, is there a way to simplify this? And what's presented to you is using the amount of property tax that the residents paid that were collected last year by the City of Avondale Estates. You all gave that number last night. It's not on the sheet, but last for 2023, it was $3,269,000 collected. So if you look at the chart, at the top of the chart, over on the left, it compares this year's tax digest to last year's.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And that over on the left, that first blue column indicates the amount of revenue that the current tax digest shows that Avondale will collect if you maintain the same millage rate. So if tonight you set the millage rate at 9.55, if you build in at least a little bit for for collections, as Patrick was talking about last night, with that with the 9.55 millage rate, we'll collect about 3.6 million. Now, it could be. I'll use 2 of my 3 minutes, and now Patrick, I see you shaking your head. I know there's a question, but the idea was to show at different millage rates how much money Avondale will collect. Over on the right side, you see tax policy choices.
You go.
Right. A, B, and C at the rollback rate, at the current millage rate, and then one in between. At the bottom are comments on each of those possible millage rates. So choice A, which is the rollback rate, which was corrected on the website this morning at 9.167. That shows the percentage increase and the dollars collected. It's interesting that percentage in dollar, that percentage matches the city's recent cost increase experience. But it's probably an impractical number to use because we have had some growth of services. At the bottom, is choice C. That's what happens if you maintain the current millage rate, given all the reports and figures that are publicly available at this point. I think the concern that was expressed by many folks last night, and you all aren't responsible for all of it, but some part of it, is that if you maintain that millage rate too far into the future, there's over time, there's a lot of residents that are becoming very uncomfortable with the idea of staying in Avondale. And as Rod Dupre mentioned last night, a lot of these big increases, I think this was 30%. A lot of that goes to the Board of Education, some to the fire district, but about a fourth of it goes to Avondale. The hope is that Avondale could maybe lead the way in reducing these millage rates to an affordable amount. Now, recently, the Board of Education came in at that 8% number, which is very interesting because their digest was also in the double digits and they reduced it. I'll just stop there for a moment, but I've summarized by saying what I said in the letter. If you all could see your way to reducing the millage rate to a point where give residents some tax relief, and you could still provide the city a very healthy revenue stream. In fact, at about a 9.35 millage rate, would provide you about an 8% revenue increase.
Okay.
So,
no, and this is it's very clear, and I appreciate the time you put into compiling this. I mean, I get your point. It's very succinct here, and but thank you.
All right, Patrick, you were shaking your head. I'd love what we were talking a little bit before, and you were saying that we won't collect quite this much, or
well, there's two things that you're missing in your calculation.
Okay.
One, the figure that we used in the actual collections from last year isn't just collections from the digest. There are several other components to it, including collections that were late from the previous year, which is a significant amount of money, right?
Yeah.
So when you say we collected 3.269 million in property taxes from the digest last year, we didn't. That was from the digest, from personal property, from motor vehicle, from back taxes. There's several things that go into that pot. So that's one thing. The second thing is, and we talked about this several times last night, is that the digest that we're using now is finalized, right, and signed off on by the city as the digest pre-appeal. So after the millage rate is set, the appeals process begins. Last year, we lost over $200,000 in revenue from appeals, meaning that the projected collections in the digest did not materialize because the Board of Equalization granted appeals in an amount that reduced that take. So the $3.6 million that you're showing that we would collect based on this digest, and you're right about one thing, which is on average, we collect somewhere in the neighborhood of 95 to 98% of taxes any given year. It's reducing slightly as people are still dealing with the after effects of COVID and inflation and have an inability to pay on time. But that 3.6 number will be reduced several $100,000 from appeals. That's our anticipation. So even at the 9.55 rate, that we are going to collect fewer dollars than what is currently projected by the digest now. Does that make sense?
What you said makes sense, except for a couple items. Some of the items that you mentioned are in fact on the digest.
They are. I'm not saying, not all of those items I was suggesting are outside the digest. I'm saying there are more components to how we there are more components into the line item that we use for budgetary purposes
Okay.
than there are in the digest,
So,
including that taxes due from the previous year.
so trying to compare apples to apples, the budget for 2024, there's a line for property taxes. That's substantially more than what I'm showing on the sheet in terms of collections. You have a feel for what that number, what number are you using to plan for that, for this year and next year?
Well, we have a published budget on our website. You can see what we anticipate collecting in our 24 budget. That's what this is. We operate in arrears.
Okay, that number is 3,793,000.
That's right.
What do you expect that number to come in at after the appeal process?
Several $100,000 less, and we'll amend the budget to reflect that, as we always do.
All right, well, wait a minute. Okay.
All right.
You made a presentation, you made an argument, we're trying to, but I mean, I'm just saying, I think this is just a difference of understanding, but we appreciate your comment and thank you for that. Okay, so other comments? Yes, Paul, yeah. Oh, okay.
Andrew.
Andrew, sorry.
All right.
Street, Andrew.
That's right.
You online?
No, he wanted.
He wanted to make a
he wanted
comment.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you shook your head and said, I'm sorry, my bad, misunderstood you.
Just a clarification, on the appeals process, he's talking, just from my own understanding, the appeal process for individual collectively, or are you talking just collectively and an appeal? Because is it the sum or is it per individual? The culmination of.
The culmination of.
Culmination of individual, that's what I want to have clarification on.
That's right, culmination of.
The question I have following to that, specifically 10%, I mean, of course, everybody would love to have 10% returns on their stock investments per year. And, cumulatively, you're going to look at things 20 years down the road. If you have 10%, that's going to look great on your portfolio. But in terms of looking 10%, what it might be next year, the difference of what I'm hearing at 8% is what you would want to have it preferred. Because cumulatively, you're going to have more and more taxes downstream if you continue to have it at 10%. So I'm trying to understand, perhaps, is this a one-off at 10%? Or you're looking at next year and doing 10% again? And then using the vision of Avondale at a 10% per year cumulatively downstream. That's what I'm trying to anticipate, because that's where you're going to have a compounding effect on your property taxes.
Well, it doesn't, if you grow your budget at a steady rate and you keep your millage rate the same, yes. But we can change the millage rate in a year. The tax digest doesn't always come in where we think it's going to come in. We have operating expenses, which are somewhat predictable, but then we also have capital expenses, which are not always predictable. Capital is a big part of this. I'm not a financial guy. I don't think your logic is faulty, but I don't think it's entirely applicable to what we're talking about. It's not like we do try to keep the millage rate the same, but we don't have to. We can change it any year, anytime, anyway. We like to keep it steady for your sake and for our sake, so we kind of know what we're up against. But I guess what you're asking is, are you going to keep growing at 8 or 9% of your budget?
Well, I'm trying for purposes of budgeting,
Right.
perspective of an individual, and you're trying to,
But
at $1,000, 10%, it's going to be the difference, right? But then you add that another 10% the following year, you're going to have a compounding effect.
Right, but we aren't growing at 10%. That's what I'm trying to explain, is that for example, this year, right? Our net digest, which is what tax receipts are generated from, grew by 11.76%. But the appeals process happens after the digest is released. So we anticipate the growth of that digest to essentially be cut in half. So we're probably looking at growth somewhere in the neighborhood between 5 and 6%.
Makes a clear sense of how you're coming up with that.
Well,
And our budgets don't increase by 10%.
No, they don't. And unfortunately, we also have to budget. We adopt a budget 6 months in advance of the digest being released because we operate on a calendar fiscal year instead of a federal fiscal year.
Right.
well, and as I mentioned last night, in November, the voters will vote on a referendum to cap property tax or property value increases at inflation, correct?
Yes.
If that passes, which I wouldn't bet against it, and the cities will have a choice of opting out, but I think that's going to be a worse proposition for us. So it looks like we're going to have to change our entire strategy next year, and we're not quite sure how we're going to do that, to be honest with you, because if, increases in property value are going to be hobbled except for sales, I mean, that's a regressive tax in my opinion, okay? Which is worth the oxygen it took to convey that to you. I hold all of this, I wouldn't say it's out the window, but next year's going to be a whole different ballgame.
If it
'Cause-
passes, yeah.
Well, Patrick was working out in California a while, they passed a similar resolution or referendum in the 70s, and it's been a disaster. It is a regressive tax. It's good for property owners, but it's tough on us, because what it's going to mean is every year we're going to raise the millage rate just to keep in business. But again, we'll have to see what happens in November. I'm just telling you, the conversations we're going to have this time next year are going to be a little different. And that's unfortunate. And I don't think that's, whatever. That's what we'll be faced with. So we'll see. But anyway, but thank you for being here. Thank you for your comment. And I understand your concern.
Thank you.
I mean, you're just trying to figure out, hey, how are we going to afford to stay here? I mean, I get it. So anyway, thank you. All right. Any others? Klaus?
Klaus Vandenberg, 3243 Wilshire. I just want to make a couple of comments and have 2 questions for you, actually. I mean, also based on the comments we just talked about, I want to just reiterate, I mean, I think we may have to look at the millage rate and budget in different ways since we're growing. The assessments are growing, the valuations are growing, particularly in the residential area. So what might be 10, 20 years ago, millage rates, smaller fixes, so becoming a much more difficult problem. And so I think probably also when the budget process comes around, so we need to be maybe more conservative in scheduling items, because I think, Patrick, as you said, I mean, that things are not coming in as advertised, so it would be rather than using the millage rate as a spigot, better to be foreseeing actually and see what actually is the problem. There may be problems, we always can add more later on and have money in the bank rather than using the millage rate this way, because at this point, as many of us pointed out last night, it's becoming a problem just because the property assessment goes sky high. The second thing I wanted to say also was about, I mean, we are in a different age now, where the citizens and the tax assessment we're pitted often against investor groups, particularly the ones who are buying those complexes downtown, buying up homes, they're driving up prices quite a bit. And then on the other hand, when they come here before you and they want all kind of favors, and tell you that the project is worth 60 million, and then when tax time comes around, all of a sudden it's only 12, 25 million. And so there's a lot of things going on here that from our perspective, we're not necessarily also ready to fix, and it looks kind of very depressing from our end in particular. Finally, I just had a couple of questions for you. There was an item in the budget of expenses, about $380,000 for events and communications. And so I was wondering actually what are we paying for it? And number two is, are you actually planning in the future to get some income from the park, actually renting it out, and what are the numbers on those? How does it also influence the impact of the millage rate on our taxes? Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm for rolling back to it.
The budget question is not an agenda item.
Okay,
Yeah,
can we answer the park question?
no, it's,
Okay.
those aren't,
They're not millage hearings.
we can
It's a
do,
millage hearings.
yeah, we can do,
only-
we can talk about that in the special call when the item comes up.
Yeah, or I'm happy to answer questions afterwards.
But it's, I mean, it's with the assessment, I mean, the point of it is that we've been talking for years about the building downtown. We're trying to raise the income, we're trying to relieve the residential area, we're trying to have more income through the commercial areas, through all the things that we're doing. So it is, and we've paid for it, and we have debt payments for the park, which also have to be covered through capital and operating budget. So I think it's quite important for the village rate discussion, actually, what actually is going on there. Because together with just the debt payment this year and this maybe $400,000 item, that comes almost $1 million
Is that true?
of the budget. So it's not a small item.
Okay. All right, other questions? Okay, any online? Okay. All right.
Hi there.
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just want, there's nobody else in the room who wanted to speak?
Not currently, no.
Okay. So Liz Goodstein, 3243 Wiltshire. I wanted to thank you all for finding or looking for a balance between answering questions and proceeding with the hearing. It's seems to really be working very nicely tonight. So we all appreciate that. So I guess I really, I mean, I'm not a numbers person, and Patrick really understands the ins and outs of this better than anyone. So we all hear this on the unpredictability front, but I'm concerned, and I think the number of people who turned out last night underline this. I know people have also been writing who couldn't come. This is pretty high impact because of the large increase in assessments. And yeah, some people are going to get that rolled back a little bit so that their ultimate payments are going to be lower, but the impact is still high. And I just really want to encourage you all to think about, I mean, no one's asking you to roll it back all the way, but to make a step toward rolling it back so we're not on that trajectory where the taxes are increasing for the city so much every year. I think it's really important to keep that in mind. I think that folks came out really out of concern about this, and it's not just a matter of not understanding. And, I really do get that the portion of the taxes that are actually going to the city are proportionately small and so on. But I think if nothing else, as a goodwill gesture to emphasize that the voices are heard, I really do want to encourage you all to think about rolling it back as much as you can. I think it's important. I think people are hurting. And these assessments, well, on the one hand, it's a great thing. We also really do want to have a city where people are able to stay. And we have a lot of people on fixed incomes. And the particular assessments, maybe it doesn't seem like that much, but for folks who are on fixed incomes, it starts to seem like a lot, and it really does add up year after year. And that issue raised earlier about not being able to be confident in budgeting for the future, that becomes more and more stressful for our elderly fellow citizens. So I really want you all to think about whether you can't find a way to trim the budget a little bit if necessary, right? When you find out what the final digest assessment is, and commit to rolling it back somewhat. I think it would do a lot of good for the city to have those voices heard tonight. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And Liz, you know, we are always listening. We just don't always agree. So I feel like you're trying to equate not listening to not rolling it back. And I don't think that's fair. And I want to point that out. We are listening. Okay, we are. But just because we don't agree doesn't mean we're not listening. And you made that implication in the earlier email and you just made it again. And I have to call that. I mean, my friend Randy, our former commissioner, he used to say it all the time. You know, we're always listening. We just don't always agree. And I think that's a fair point. But I appreciate your comment and what you're saying.
Can I respond to that, please?
Yes.
Because this is the very first thing I said is, I really appreciate the way you all are doing things tonight. I do feel that you heard. I feel that you heard also my concern about how things went last night, and I appreciate that. I mean, I don't have any issue about us disagreeing. My concern is that when people disagree, it's experienced as a form of hostility, and that the responses are like that. And it isn't, I mean, it isn't like that. This is just something that you can disagree about. What I'm saying is it's a matter of how you express your values, how you do your budgeting. And this choice on the millage rate is a values choice. And a lot of people came out last night. A lot of people are concerned about this. A lot of people are hurting. And in this case, listening, I think, and taking that seriously is, I mean, I'm just asking each of you in your voting individually to weigh your responsibility to those citizens, the people who spoke, the people who didn't speak, the people who came out in the heat, to make the feeling felt, right, that this was a real issue for them, this amount. And I mean, I do not believe and have never said that we can't disagree. I'm in favor of us disagreeing better. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay, seeing no hands, I would like to bring it back. Where are we now? Okay, so we're going to close the public hearing, and do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
That was Commissioner Smith. Do I have a second?
Second.
That's Commissioner Rott. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.